Don Lemon brought on a Muslim human rights attorney and asked him if he supports ISIS, in spite of the fact that there was no evidence to suggest that this individual, Arsalan Iftikhar, supported ISIS. And there's a lot to discuss here, Lewis, because there were knee-jerk reactions from both sides in response to what happened here. And I think that the reality happens to be far more nuanced because of what was said. So let's start at the very beginning. Here's Don Lemon talking to Arsalan Iftikhar about a poll that found 1 in 6 French people supported ISIS, okay? And he asked the question of Arsalan Iftikhar once, and Arsalan Iftikhar didn't really answer the question. And then Don Lemon says, seemingly unprovoked, "Do you support ISIS?" Let's pick up the video and audio there.
I understand where you're going with, but I just want to get a more specific. Again, in August, 16% of French citizens support ISIS. Would you describe those who support ISIS as Islamic extremists? Do you support ISIS?
Wait, did you just ask if I support ISIS? And I just answered your question. I said that obviously these 16% of people support the ideology, but again, I don't think that that would necessarily extrapolate to supporting of killing of innocent people. You can have sympathy for an ideology and not, support the mass murder of people. And that's what the vast majority of the Muslim street, whether you're dealing with Paris or Islamabad or Jakarta, we're as horrified as everybody else about what happened today, and we grieve with the victims and with the people of Paris.
All right, so Arsalan Iftikhar, he happens to be a Muslim. He's a human rights attorney. Why is Don Lemon saying, "Do you support ISIS?" If there was an incident of Christian terror, in fact, we have stories this week about a Christian militia who was planning to attack police. Would you bring on a random pastor and say, "Do you support this right-wing Christian terror against police?" We would say that doesn't happen. There's this clear double standard. So do you agree, Lewis, with the first part, that it was kind of an odd question for Don Lemon to ask?
Well, it depends on the context. I do not think it was, if when we get into the follow-up here, I think it's going to be clear why I don't think that it was a strange question to ask. I think it was an important question to ask.
Once I looked at the follow-up and the answer from Arsalan Iftikhar, I also had a change of heart. I had a knee-jerk reaction of, how dare Don Lemon, the guy who asked one of the Bill Cosby accusers why she didn't just bite Bill Cosby's penis during oral sex, and engaged in all sorts of weird stuff when he was covering the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson. I also said, oh, another Don Lemon bizarre question. But listen to the specifics of what was said. Arsalan Iftikhar kept talking about people who support ISIS's ideology, but not the murder of innocent people. And if I were Don Lemon, I would have followed up and said, hold on, Arsalan Iftikhar, explain to me how you could support the ideology of ISIS, which supports the killing of apostates and the killing of non-Muslims and Westerners. How can you support that ideology, but not what the ideology says, right? That would have been my next question. And when he did ask Arsalan Iftikhar, do you support ISIS? Arsalan Iftikhar said, I answered the question. These 16% of people support the ideology, but again, I don't think that you could necessarily extrapolate that to the supporting of killing of innocent people. You can have sympathy for an ideology, the ideology of ISIS, and not support the mass murder of people. So I had this reaction that the question was presumptive and that there was a double standard there. And when I didn't hear an answer from Arsalan Iftikhar, not about that, but even about the poll that made sense, I actually started thinking, wow, maybe Arsalan Iftikhar does support the ideology of ISIS, which is incredibly hateful and xenophobic in nature.
You cannot support the ideology of ISIS and say that you oppose the killing of people. They are not two separate things. The ideology of ISIS is to kill people.
Absolutely.
To kill massive amounts of people. And so you cannot separate the two. That's impossible. It's illogical. It makes no sense. And clearly, I think I think he does support ISIS. I think it's clear that he thinks that he supports their ideology and maybe not the killing. He couldn't even come out and flat out say, no, I do not support ISIS.
Now, I'm going to take Arsalan Iftikhar at his word that he may well believe that you can support the ideology of ISIS, but not the killing of innocent people. I just don't know how you explain that, and I would be open to hearing an explanation of that. But to say, I support all of the stuff about ISIS that is about Islamic scripture, but not the violence. Well, then you don't really support ISIS. You just support you just support the doctrine of Islam, and you don't even have to talk about ISIS, right? So I'm trying to figure out in my mind, Lewis, how those two positions could actually exist without being mutually exclusive. So what started off as a very bizarre line of questioning from Don Lemon, admittedly, ended up with me saying, wait a second, going from, of course he doesn't support the ideology of ISIS, to wait a second, I think he says he does. I think he does support the ideology of ISIS. Send me your thoughts on this very controversial clip. Twitter.com/dpakman. Tweet me, follow me. We'll be back after this.